Okay, ready?
We're ready to roll, Raf.
Okay.
And this is then for our learning in dedication for today.
Okay, our learning will be dedicated to the Refuah Shlema of Yisrael ben Rachel and Shmuel ben Rachel.
Thank you very much.
Again, we're learning Nesivos Oilam.
You have to speak louder.
We are learning the Nesivos Oilam of the Maharal, Perek Daled in the middle. Okay, continuing with a new Gemara that he's discussing here from Ketzim Mevorachim and Bruchas. Omar Rabbi Yochanan Mishim Rabbi Yehuda Bar Ilui Boy Urei Ma Ben Doiras Rishonim the Doiras Achroinim. Very famous Gemara because it illustrates a very important point. What is the difference between the Doiras Rishonim, meaning the earlier generations, and Doiras Achroinim and the later generations in terms of learning? Doiras Rishonim She'usi Toirasan Kiva Imalachtan Arui. So the first generations used to make their learning as the priority, and the rest of the work to just for Parnasa, they made it temporary. It was something that's not the Kiva means a fixed thing. They made the learning was really the fixed thing. That was the thing they were dedicated to no matter what. And the work that they had to do, the regular work, was something that they did just as it was time was available, whatever. It wasn't the real commitment that they had like they did to the Torah. So it says Zeh v'Zeh Niskayim v'Yudan, that both the work that the learning that they did and the work that they did both were successful. Both they had benefit from both aspects. He says we already explained why that is. Oid yesh lechud das. Oh, sorry, I skipped the part. It finishes. So those when they did that, then they were successful in both areas. They had parnasa and they also were successful in their learning. Achroinim, the later generations, usim elachtan kiva b'toyrusna aroi. So the later generations that reversed it, so that their learning was just something they did when they had time for, more or less, and their malacha, the parnasa that they were involved with, they made it kavod, they made that the real commitment. It says zev zeloin is kind b'yudan. So they, in that case, both of the aspects of the parnasa and the Torah, they didn't have hanor from either of them. He says we already explained that why that is. He's going to explain more. Oid yesh l'chul das ki rui la'udam sheyitin chelek lekol echad k'fi harui. So what he wants to point out here is that the Torah is not asking us, Hashem is not asking us to only devote ourselves to one and not the other exclusively. It's not saying that if a person is able to spend all of their time learning, of course it's a wonderful thing, but that's not expected. That's not required. He's not asking us to spend all of our time on one or the other. So he says, he's just asking that each one we appropriate the time, the priority, according to it what is appropriate for that aspect. So he's saying that the Olam Habu is the Iker. Now, what does that mean the Olam Habu is Iker? That means in terms of what a person has to have in mind as their goal, as something that they're working towards. They're working towards Olam Haba, because Olam Haba, the world to come, if you whether you interpret that as being the afterlife, in other words, after a person's nifter, where they go to Gan Eden, whatever, that is an inevitable sof. In other words, everybody is going to go to some aspect of Olam Haba, and it makes and that is going to be for a much longer period of time than our life in this world. Or if you interpret it to be the world to come in terms of after Tchias HaMesim, when everybody comes back again, so that's going to be forever. So in other words, either way, what is that dependent on? In other words, if we are going to work towards something, put away, let's say, something we're going to do in our lives for a later goal, that's something that we're going to put away for, something we're going to invest in and to put away for the future, it makes a lot more sense to put away for Olam Haba than for Olam Hazeh, because Olam Hazeh is only a path to get to Olam Haba. If we see that our lives are set up in such a way that the tachlis is not Olam Hazeh, this world, because that's not the end. The end is where it's going towards, which is Olam Haba. That's the ultimate goal. So if we're going to look at the ikar and the tafel, what's the main thing, and what's the thing that is subordinate to that, that's working towards that, then obviously we have to look at the Olam Haba as being the ikar. The kaktia toirusoi shehino senes loichayim lo'olam habu gam kein ikar. So as we said, if the Olam Haba is ikar, then the Torah, which leads us towards Olam Haba, whatever knowledge we acquire through the Torah, and we apply that to our lives in Olam Hazeh, that is going to lead us in a path that's going to ultimately end in an increased share in Olam Haba. It makes sense to invest in that. So in the same respect, it makes sense. What is the Maharal trying to do b'derech klal? He's trying to do things that make sense. He's trying to show us how the Torah makes sense. He's of course, many aspects of the Torah we can't understand. But he's taking basically those rational aspects of the Torah that give us a reason, give something we can understand with our seichel, that our lives should be run al pi seichel. If we just run our lives on the basis of what other people are doing, what we see is in the world, and this is the way we just accept it to be because that's the way everybody else is. That's not what the Maharal is saying. The Maharal is saying, according to the Torah, we have to go and re-examine our priorities and our mindset and our whole reason for living, our whole way that we live our lives in such a way that is consistent with seichel. It has to make sense. So in this case, he's bringing out that our lives in this world is temporary. Everybody dies eventually. So he's only here for that short period from the time that he's born until he dies. That's the amount of time he has to work with, and that's all right. That means that that's not a permanent thing. That's something that comes and goes. It's not a permanent existence. Whereas Olam Haba is a permanent existence. So as long as we believe that existence exists, then we're coming from an eternal place and we're going towards an eternal place. So obviously that which is going to lead us is that we're going to invest our time and effort in this world. It makes sense to invest that in Olam Haba, but at the same time, he's not saying give up Olam Hazeh altogether, because we have to obviously sustain ourselves in Olam Hazeh. So, but it should be in a way that's all right. It should be in a way that just as this world is temporary, so that whatever we do in terms of our work is also be temporary. It should be something that's put in the to minimize, to put in as a lower priority than what we're doing towards Olam Haba. The kasha yasem alachto yarai toirusa kava. So when we actually do that and we make our work as the subordinate to the temporary thing as opposed to the Torah, which is kavah, which is the lasting thing, the permanent thing. Shneim is kaimim. So they both end up being successful. Ki yitain lechol echad ve'echad chelkoi kefi masharui. Because everybody is going to get their proper place in each according to what's appropriate. If he reverses it, he's saying it contradicts the Seder Olam. It contradicts the way Hashem created the world. As we saw, if it's going to be roy, if it's going to be temporary, it should be together with the effort which is temporary. If it's going to be something permanent, then that's the effort that we put in is also be permanent. Then what we're doing with our lives is consistent with the way the world and the way the life itself is set up. Otherwise, it's a stira, it's a contradiction. So he says, as a general rule, when we do things with our lives which are not consistent and in the flow, it's not consistent with what the reality is. And reality is set up with a different, whatever it is, it's like we're in denial. We don't want to accept that Olam Haba is the Iker. So, and we don't want to accept that our major preoccupation should be with Torah, which is going to lead us to Olam Haba. So it's a question of our own willingness to accept it. It's not because once you, I mean, for an atheist, like a fry person that doesn't even accept the basic principles that there is an oil haba bichlal, and he only wants to see, do what he sees, what they say, it's the expression, seeing is believing. So they don't believe in anything other than what they can see. So if they can't see oil haba in front of their eyes, then they don't believe in it. So despite all of the rayas and all of the stories and all of the things we have to support, from all kinds of sources besides the Torah itself, obviously, that there is such a thing as Olam Haba, and all the fact that all the other cultures and religions also accept that there's some kind of Olam Haba. So it's like, everybody sees it, but they don't see it. So if they don't see it, they don't believe it. But if you do believe in the basic principles, but you're not living your life in a consistent way according to those principles, then you're just going to end up not being successful. Neither is going to really succeed in your life. Also, there's another aspect that if you make your work something which is subordinate to your learning, which is the main emphasis or the main priority in your life, then Hashem is going to give you. There's going to be more siyata shemaya. There's going to be more help that you should be successful in the time you spend on your work. I believe that the Rambam proposed a Seder Hayoim, in terms of a routine for a person during their day, that they should be spending only a third of their time on Parnasa. And a third of time to Parnasa, I think a third of time is learning, and a third of time sleeping, something like that, personal needs. But it's not at all this idea that, you work an 8-hour day, and then you're lucky if you can fit in an hour for a shiur. That was never the idea. So and also a person has to understand, when they're talking about how much time they have to put into their livelihood, it goes back to priorities again. In other words, if they want to be super comfortable, they basically want to have oilam haba in oilam haza. They want to be able to live, well. Like they can, the best they can possibly imagine to live in a gashmius way, because obviously we're not talking about Torah here, we're talking about, they want the physical comforts, they want the security, they want the, putting all of their investments and all these different things, are all talking about a concept of life which is making the ultimate and the main priority something which is temporary by nature, and making that the priority as if that is what is worth living for. That's something that becomes a prerequisite, something that they absolutely have to have, this and this and this and this, and it involves not just what they're enjoying in their lifestyle, but even in terms of investments for things that they're going to put away for even after they die. They have to own the house, and the house has to be a good investment, and it has to be worth so much more because, for future generations or who knows what, they have to put away something. It's all gashmias, and they don't recognize at all that really what they're putting away is the ruchnias, and that's what's going to be sustaining them. That's their investment for oilam haba that's going to be sustaining them, in the real life, which is coming afterwards. Anyway, so he says, so we talked about the of Hil Azukin that was Mekayim the Torah, though he didn't have any money, didn't even have enough money to get into the Besmedrash. So he's saying, so if he's Mekayim the Torah Me'oini, that's a Talmid Chucham Hazeh, he's Sichli Gomer. So that a Talmid Chucham was living in accordance with his principles. He's living in accordance with his beliefs. So then he becomes himself a Dova Sichli. He's not an animal anymore. He's not just an advanced animal. He's his mitzias, his ikar, his atzmus is sichli. It's running according to his mind. His seichel is running his life. That's what is calling the shots. He has to be doing something which makes sense according to seichel. So his beliefs are in harmony with what he's doing. And not just the beliefs are over here, and I believe that, but the implications of that belief I don't want to actually act on them, because I'm acting in the way that everybody else acts, who doesn't even have those ideas and doesn't even believe in those things and doesn't even know what's going on. So how does it make sense that I should live the same way as everybody else in society if my principles are totally different than theirs? Their lives are based on something completely different. So maybe actually in terms of their belief system, it makes sense to do what they're doing. If they don't believe there is a Haba, so then it makes sense for them to put all their koiches into the Haza. But for a yid, from a yid, a person who does have a Torah hashkafa, his belief system is in accordance with Torah. It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. He has to reevaluate. He has to question. And you're talking about questioning something. You have to question your own values. Where are they coming from? Are they coming from the secular society, the prevailing society, or are they coming from Torah? So you just have to know what's what. And so then he's saying that person, that Talmid Chacham, becomes himself a dover sichli. So he says, adas noisein v'haseichel mechayev. So that way the das, the knowledge, is giving. It's giving the proper direction. V'haseichel mechayev, and the seichel is making that obligatory. It's saying that this is the way it has to be done. There's no other way. This is you don't really have a choice. Once you've accepted those things, you have to follow it through. So there's this principle from Torah, soine matunos yichya. The person wants to be successful, he wants to live, he should hate the acceptance of gifts. He should not want to accept gifts from other people. So he has to be the yikov is yitzor. It says Yitzhar wants to take advantage of these gifts. He says, don't take it. It's a very, very difficult thing today because it's a question of
Does the idea of elevating Gashmias fit in here at all?
Okay, elevating Gashmias. If you really look at it again, what it's really talking about. Elevating Gashmias is every single second in your life, you are elevating Gashmias if you're doing mitzvahs. Because every mitzvah involves some kind of Gashmias, whether it's washing your hands and making a bracha on that, or eating anything, or you look at something and have in mind Hashem, you're elevating the Gashmias. I mean, you're elevating Gashmias constantly. A person doesn't have to think, well, I have to make a lot of money so that I can buy a lot of things, and all those things are going to get elevated because I'm buying them. That doesn't make sense, especially if it means taking time away from Torah in order to make the money that I'm going to need in order to buy the things. Because you can be, if your head is in the right place, you're constantly elevating Gashmias. The Gashmias of your own body, you're elevating constantly if it's involved with what is Hashem. So that's how that fits in. Okay. So anyway, what it means is that if a person is wealthy, if they inherited a fortune, or if they're getting paid $1,000 an hour or something like that, so they have the money and they use the money and they have in mind that they're elevating Gashmis instead of just using it for their own tithas. So that's very good. But to take away time from Torah in order to get that doesn't make sense. Okay, so he says he has to fight his Yetzer Hara and not be makabel the matunas. V'lo yafsid hamadrega ha'elyoina sheyesh lo im efshar b'shim inyan sheya oimed b'zeh. In other words, he's saying that if it's at all possible, you should not be accepting gifts because that might cause you to lose the madrega that you are supposed to be on. In other words, if a yid is on a certain level of depending on Hashem, and he doesn't want to be dependent on other people, because I can give examples. For example, where this plays out, when people are, for example, people that are not really, they're not really incapacitated, let's say, by some kind of disability, and they manipulate things so that they should make themselves look like they're in the worst possible shape, so they can get money from the government, some kind of disability, or whatever. So the problem there is that, they have to constantly be showing themselves to be disabled because otherwise they'll take away the subsidy. And if they're thinking of the subsidy in terms of, they can't get out, they become dependent on the subsidy, so they can't get along without it, then they're going to instead of looking to make themselves more independent and more, self-sufficient and more able to maximize their participation in society, doing the things they're supposed to do, they're going to make themselves look like a nebuch, like they're not going to take advantage of certain, opportunities to make themselves in a better position because of the fact that they have to maintain this disabled, appearance. So because they're afraid of losing the money, so in essence, it's working against them. Because really, they should be trying to get well. They should be trying to get better, not trying to stay sick so that they look bad, so that they can get the money. So it's one example of that kind of thing. אבל אם יש לו, ואם כל זה הילוית לקבל מבני נתונס, this is what he's saying. So if a person has, if he doesn't, mamish is lacking, and he mamish, needs money to survive, so then you can be makabel metunis. The person's on the street asking for donations or whatever. So it's not saying that you have to, you can't live. But if a person does have, and still he has a desire to take money from other sources, that he should be able to have things moisturous, extra things that he doesn't really need. So then it's a problem. He says, "Meish ze usir ledaber." So if such a person, you're forbidden to talk about him. Because again, he's going out of the midah sichlis. He's going out of this the correct, seicheldike, way of life that makes sense. In fact, it's the opposite of seichel. He says, such a person it's forbidden to call him a talmid chacham. Lefi mashe amani lemala ki tzurich sheyeh udam atzmai doime. A person has to be constantly, behaving in a way that is consistent with the seichel. Because then if he's living in a seichelic way, he's able to be makabel the Torah. There's a whole thing about when he talks about being tzlocha in learning. There are lots of people that sit and learn, and it doesn't go in. They don't get anything out of it. They don't internalize it. It doesn't help them. They may not even understand it. It just doesn't go in. So he's saying because they're not living according to seichel. The seichel is like secondary. The seichel is on the back burner. That's not the main thing of their lives. So when their seichel is really determining the way they live their lives, then the sun in America. All right. That when the seichel is determining what's going on in their lives, and that's where they're putting their effort into, is in strengthening the seichel, then the seichel is where the Torah is. So the Torah can be makabel what they're the seichel can be makabel what they're learning. But if they're living in a way that's contrary to seichel, so then the seichel is not what's really important to them. They're not investing in, they're not making it a priority. So then it doesn't understand the Torah either. The enum is yachas al seichel he efshel lekabel hasichli, because it's not living in a seichelic way. Then he can't be makabel the seichel. He ha Torah. Bevadai bal midazois he efshel sheyeh imoy ha Torah hasichlis. So this is why you can't call him a talmid chacham, because the talmid chacham has to be maximizing the seichel, and this person not living in a seichelic way, he can't be a talmid chacham. Maki hamida hazois hepech hasichli kemosh nizbur. The kidover shehi chomri. He mekabel v'loy kein haseichel. A person that is what they call megushim, a person that is involved with his choimer, with his material, let's say, as opposed to the intellect. So then he's a he mekabel v'loy kein haseichel. So the chomri is mekabel. I guess he's talking about the Gashmis here. The loy kein haseichel ki mipnei she'apshitis sheboy eino mekabel. Shekol davar shehi pushit eino mekabel. So that's already kind of a whole another idea. But the idea that there's a simplicity. There's a person is like Hashem, as we talk about, Hashem is a seichel apushit or whatever. There's an idea of being. Not being a conglomerate, not being something that's you're putting together all kinds of different things from all kinds of different places and putting it into one big mush, that it's not really consistent one with the other. If a thing is simple, then it has a core, and that core is mispashet. That is maybe I'm saying it this way, Taka, that the seichel is the core, and the core is being miyached, it's uniting things, and it's spreading out to influence other things, that everything should be consistent. But when things are just kind of slapped together and trying to make a unity out of disparate things that don't really work together, then it can't be mekabel anything, or it is mekabel, but it can't be mashpia. As I was saying, it says pshitus by ein mekabel. That which has a pshitus to itself, it's not makabel because it's giving out, but something that is just receiving from everywhere, without it necessarily having been consistent. So it's able to be makabel, but then it can't make sense out of what it has. I'm not sure what time do we have here. There's another paragraph. Is that it? It's 5 to 10. Okay, another 5 minutes. We'll go through a few more lines here. Okay, Perek Eitzim Avorch. Oh no, sorry. Perek Eli Trefus. This is in Chilin. Omar Rabbi Chizda, another 5 minutes. Omar Rabbi Chizda, Eize Talmid Chochem Aroya Trefa La'atzmoi. So who is a Talmid Chochem? We're talking about what defines a Talmid Chochem is a person who sees a trefa in himself. He sees something that's not in order in himself. He's able to be self-critical and he's able to see what's wrong that he has to fix. So he says, how do I trefa atzmai? Omar Rabbi Chizda, Eize Soine Matunas Yichya Zeharoya Trefa Atzmai. So now he's going to connect these two ideas. And he says that the Soine Matunas Yichya, a person who hates being makabel, receiving gifts, so he's going to live. So he says, who is that person? He says, Roya Trevel Atzmai. That's a person who sees problems in himself. He's self-critical. He's when he's doing something wrong. Durish ma zitra mishmeder Rav Chizda kol misha koire v'soine v'shoine. Sorry, koire v'shoine. A person that learns the Roya Trevel Atzmai, and he also is able to see his own defects. V'shimish Talmid Chochem, and he's also serving a Talmid Chochem. So on him, the pasuk is saying that you're that a person that you're going to work and you're going to be able to eat from that, and it's going to be good for you. Everything's going to be good. So those are the three requirements in order to have a good life. You shouldn't have problems. One is that you don't want to receive toivus from others. Another one is that you see your own defects, and also that you're serving a Talmid Chochem. So he said, Rav Zvid oimer zoiche v'noichel shnei oilamus. This says that he's zoiche and he actually inherits two worlds: oilam hazeh, oilam habu. Alshech oilam hazeh, v'toiv lach oilam habu. So it says Alshech v'toiv lach. Alshech is going on oilam hazeh, and toiv lach oilam habu. So he's successful in both domains, both this world and the next world, because he has these qualities. Eliezer ki hoya mishadrele mibenesia midi loy shukol. So when they sent him from the Beis Midrash, some gifts or something, he didn't take it. V'chihavi mizamnele loy ozil. Omer loy bui mar de achya shniya v'shoyne matunas yichya. Okay, I haven't prepared this particular shtickle, so I'll stop here.
Thank you very much. Have a good night for today.
Thank you.